And under his glory he shall kindle a burning like the burning of a fire, and the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame. And it shall burn and devour his briars and his thorns in one day, and shall consume the glory of his forest, and of his fruitful field, both soul and body. And they shall be as when a standard bearer fainteth, and the rest of the trees of his forest shall be few, that a child may write them. And it shall come to pass in that day that the remnant of Israel and such as are escaped of the house of Jacob shall no more again stay on him that smote them, but shall...
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Isaiah, chapter 37. We got about halfway through the chapter. We're gonna read through it again, just the whole chapter, for a nice overview, just to refresh our minds and get us back into what we're talking about. And it came to pass when King Hezekiah heard it. Heard what? Heard the words of Rabshakeh, the servant of the king of Assyria, reading the words of the king of Assyria, or reciting the words of the king of Assyria, and concerning his threats in Jerusalem, and etc. We're gonna, basically, who are they among all the gods of these lands that delivered their land out of my hand? And that was from Rabshakeh. The message being brought to him from Shebna and Eliakim. Now, chapter 37. And it came to pass when King Hezekiah heard it, that he rent his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests, covered with sackcloth, unto Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos. And they said unto him, Thus saith Hezekiah, This is a day of trouble, and of rebuke, and of blasphemy. For the children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring forth. It may be the Lord thy God will hear the words of Rabshakeh, whom the king of Assyria his master has sent to reproach the living God, and will reprove the words which the Lord thy God hath heard. Wherefore lift up thy prayer for the remnant that is left. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah. And Isaiah said unto them, Thus shall ye say unto your master, Thus saith the Lord, Be not afraid of the words that thou hast heard, wherewith the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor, and return to his own land. And I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. So Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria warring against Libnah, for he had heard that he was departed from Lachish. And he heard say concerning Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia, He is come forth to make war with thee. And when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, Thus shall ye speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah, saying, Let not thy God, in whom thou trustest, deceive thee, saying, Jerusalem shall not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, thou hast heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands, by destroying them utterly. And shalt thou be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them which my fathers have destroyed, as Gozan, and Haran, and Rezeph, and the children of Eden, which were in Telassar? Where is the king of Hamath, and the king of Arphad, and the king of the city of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Iva? And Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers, and read it. And Hezekiah went up to the house of the Lord, and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed unto the Lord, saying, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, that dwellest between the cherubims. Thou art God, even thou alone. Of all the kingdoms of the earth, thou hast made heaven and earth. Incline thine ear, O Lord, and hear. Open thine eyes, O Lord, and see, and hear all the words of Sennacherib, which hath sent to reproach the living God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations and their countries, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they have destroyed them. Now therefore, Lord, our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord. I almost wonder, all these the Lords, it is in all caps. That means Jehovah, Yahweh, however you prefer to say it. But all the people trained in Hebrew seem to say Yahweh. I'm not worried about it because I call him by the name of Jesus. That is how I know him. The name, he is the living God, the true God, the one God. His name is not so much that it's how you pronounce Yahweh. It's all the things that he did. I didn't mean to interrupt. Thou art the Lord. But that's when I say the Lord, I feel like it's not getting enough emphasis. Even thou only. Then Isaiah the son of Amos sent unto Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, whereas thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib king of Assyria. This is the word which the Lord hath spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice, and lifted up thine eyes on high? Even against the Holy One of Israel. By thy servants hast thou reproached the Lord, and said, By the multitude of my chariots I am come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, and I will cut down the tall cedars thereof, and the choice fir trees thereof, and I will enter into the height of his border, and the forest of his Carmel. I have digged and drunk water, and with the sole of my feet I have dried up all the rivers of the besieged places. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, and of ancient times that I have formed it? Now have I brought it to pass that thou shouldest be to lay waste defenced cities into ruinous heaps. Therefore their inhabitants were of small power. They were dismayed and confounded. They were as the grass of the field, and as the green herb, as the grass on the housetops, and as corn blasted before it be grown up. But I know thy abode, and thy going out, and thy coming in, and thy rage against me. Because thy rage against me and thy tumult is come up into my ears, therefore I will put my hook in thy nose, and my bridle in thy lips, and I will turn thee back by the way which thou camest, and this shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year such as groweth of itself, and the second year which springeth of the same. And in the third year sow ye, and reap, and plant vineyards, and eat the fruit thereof. And the remnant that is escaped of the house of Judah shall again take root downward, and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and they that escape out of Mount Zion. The zeal of the Lord of hosts shall do this. Therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shields, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith the Lord. For I will defend the city to save it, for my own sake, and for my servant David's sake. Then the angel of the Lord went forth, and smote the camp of the Assyrians 185,000, and when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed, and went and returned, and dwelt at Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch his god, that Adremelech and Sharezer his sons smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia, and Esarhaddon his son reigned in his stead. Sometimes I like reading the big chunks, but I almost feel like I would have noted, like when it says, I will turn him back by the way he camest, or I will turn, I almost need like a boom, big paragraph break there. Because he's talking to the king of Assyria, and then he's talking back to Hezekiah, and then in verse 27, and also after verse 25, there should be another kind of a break, because it goes from the Lord giving voice to the Assyrian, the Lord giving him a voice, saying what his thoughts are, to him replying to him. And this is all by the mouth of the prophet Isaiah. Obviously, Hezekiah goes into the temple, and then Hezekiah is visited by Isaiah. I forget if he does he send him a letter or does he visit? He sends to him. He may even send him with a messenger. Here's what the word of the Lord is. He was praying. And this is what the Lord has spoken. And we talked about how the daughter of Zion had despised and laughed thee to scorn. You understand, in their culture, the laughter of a woman would be one of the most humiliating things to be laughed at, because it's like being laughed at by children. Like it's actually a step up from that. Not quite as humiliating. It may be more so because of one. Because of the relationship between men and women, and because a grown woman has a greater judgment than a child, and yet it's still pregnant. But anyways, it's a powerful symbolic image. He portrays the city again as a woman. How has the faithful city become an harlot? There are two cities. It's something I've tried to explain. The Jerusalem is two cities. There's a faithful city and there's an unfaithful city. It has two sides to it. A lot like people do. We have a sinful nature. Well, and then God has given us his divine nature. They cannot coexist. One must be removed. They do coexist, sort of. Well, the point is, they can't coexist. That's why we die. They do for a little while. It's like people say, it's not like oil and water don't mix. What it is you can mix them up, but they separate eventually. They can't be kept together. The situation cannot continue. As Jesus said, you cannot serve two masters. You will either hate the one and love the other, or cleave to the one and despise the other. Because though one may serve two masters for a time, meaning it's happening as far as the masters are being told, you're my master and you're my master. I serve two masters. But they both have differing, conflicting demands. So you end up serving neither truly. And if you will serve either, you will eventually serve one. It's unlikely, or none, which is effectively serving sin anyway. So that's the other master anyway. So, okay, so, we talked about in Revelation, the bride, the Lamb's wife, versus the great whore, representing the apostasy, representing those who marry themselves to Satan, in that figurative sense, in which we are also. I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife, is the way it is worded in Revelation. Come hither, and I will show thee the bride, the Lamb's wife, and it's the city. But also, we are called by the Apostle Paul the bride of Christ. Because that is how it is understood, that this faithful city is the bride. It is the collective of the people of God together, having a society that is based on righteousness, holiness, truth, and all those things, and love. And And that is the faithful city, the good city. The other one is the sinful city, the one given over to lust, the one given over to covetousness, the one given over to perversity and to false gods, to lies and to deception. And she also, like, does she laugh? I was just thinking, like, when I have my book of Revelation, chapter 17, when I introduce the whore, she comes in with a laugh. I haven't totally sorted out the exact laugh I'm going to use. I wanted to get something unique, but I can't laugh like a girl. Though, actually, if I tried, it'd probably be funny. Or I don't know. I don't know. Is that how girls laugh? Probably. Oh, boy. Anyways. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Foolish. Yeah, and as I was reading this, actually, who hast thou, right, from yesterday, and because this is just the part where we get to what the Lord's saying, right? Who hast thou done all these things to? And it just made me think again of 1 Corinthians chapter 2, round about verse 6, where we have, that's 6 verse 6, 2 verse 6. Howbeit we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world that come to naught. Like Sennacherib. Comes to nothing in the end. All that stink, all that noise, all that blood, all that gore, all that glory. I'm the greatest! I'm the greatest! Comes to nothing. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of this world knew. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Whom is it thou hast? Like I always say, one of the key things they don't get, and I know this passage probably refers to a lot more, well, not probably, it does refer to much more than what I'm saying. But it is a simple principle that I extract from that same thing. Is that, like, yeah, of course. The reason they're blind, because if they had just a bit of the wisdom that we have to understand what they were doing. You know what I mean? There is a living God. There is a judge of the earth out there. You know what I mean? I think it's funny when people talk about the universe being a simulation, right? How much that would, if it was a simulation, would it be more or less convincing that there was an intelligence behind it? I'm not sure what they mean by that. Simulation, yeah. Because this is not ultimate reality. It's a simulation of the ultimate reality, which is God. He is the ultimate reality. So, if they had the wisdom, they know, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't blaspheme the living God. The gods of Hamath and the gods of Arphad, of course I overcame them. Because God made it easy. Remember how easy? My hand has found as a nest all the kingdoms of the earth. Everything just seemed laid out for me to just take. It was easy. The Assyrians really just went around just taking everything. All these little city-states. Because they just had amassed an army and I don't know. Honestly, all the historical factors around the rise of Assyria, I'm not familiar with everything that led to their rise. But I remember studying about it in history. And just their brutality, and also that they were very effective at besieging these city-states. Because they just took all these city-states that were, protected. Well, not just city-states, but they were kingdoms and cities, obviously Israel, but there were a lot of small nations throughout all the, it wasn't just Israel. They had conquered a lot of little countries like Israel with little gods like Israel. And the Assyrian just does not have the wisdom to know that this is not the same God. You know, people would say, oh, the God of Israel was just another God within all the other gods. They always say that, but you know what? That's bullshit. Sorry. Because that was dealt with ages ago. That's why the Assyrians are all Christians, unless they've given up their faith foolishly, you know, like to become atheists or something, because they became culturally Christian. They knew the lesson of history. You know, they got 2 visitations. You know, once with Jonah and then the apostles. I don't know which apostle particularly. You know, I wonder if they have that. You know, because they are a nation since ancient times. To this day, I know an Assyrian gentleman. You know, in fact, he was the one who helped straighten me out on the Trinity. It's mostly on just one small point that it actually hinged, because I wasn't that far from being Orthodox anyways. Because it just, if you follow the Bible, you're going to gather together all the evidence and say, like, well, you know, some of the ways, you know, some of the nice, easy solutions we want to make are not so easy when you have to account for all the scriptures. And to me, that's like an issue of almost ethics for teachers and for stuff. Like, how can you ethically, yeah, I mean that there's some sort of mishandling of the craft to be overly confident of a position when, unless you're just completely ignorant, you know there are verses which undermine that significantly. I mean, just like, you know, to me it's like when you're talking about eternal torment or annihilationism on one hand, you can make a good case from either side. I think a stronger one is for annihilationism, actually. That's why I still believe that. You can make a stronger case, but like the other side pretends like there is nothing, like there's nothing there. And that to me is a little bit, I don't know. Well, if it's not yours, I guess if it's not yours, if you specialize in some other aspect of things, because a lot of people do not specialize in doctrine that is not, because the thing is, there isn't a lot of hellfire preaching going on. Everyone preaches, you know, love, you know, basically, and welcoming people, I guess. Not everyone, but I mean, that's the general. When I was coming up, it was all, you know, the big rising thing was Willow Creek and their seeker-sensitive services. And the guy who came up with that also liked to grab the young ladies in his office. Good old Bill Hybels. You know, or grab or, you know, make suggestions, you know. I think that's what happens to powerful people. They become corrupted. It corrupts them. Just like Ravi Zacharias. All corrupted by their belief in their own importance in God's kingdom, no doubt. I could see how that could corrupt a man. Anyways, but there's a certain wisdom, you know, that's not the wisdom they lacked. The wisdom that the ungodly lack. The wisdom that the princes of this world, well, that's the thing. It's like you rise too high in the earthly church and you start filling stadiums and people are screaming your name. You know, and you're collecting millions of dollars of donations to whatever. You become like a prince of this world. Because I just don't see much call for that, really. Like, as far as, like, you know what I mean? Like, doing that. You have to actually set that up. It doesn't just happen. You know what I mean? I'm living proof. It's not like you just pick up the Bible and start talking about it and people start throwing money at you. It doesn't happen. You have to actively ask for money. You do. Because, like, I don't get any, hardly. Except, like, there's someone grandfathered in. He's almost like my surrogate grandfather. Good old, you know, Robert. You know, it's like, but, and occasionally other people who from the past know. You know, but I do not ask for donations. And so I don't get any, hardly, you know. Of course, because like and that's the thing. They have to build that. They have to work on that. They have to get the big building. You know, there's all this like you have to really grab for the money. And the thing is, while you're doing that, there's other things you're not focused on. There's other things you're not grabbing onto. All right, I'm somewhat off topic. Well, so who have you exalted? Well, he has no idea, obviously, but he's about to basically run face first into fate. God has already done it. The whole thing is already, and so, he said in his heart this part. I like this part. By the multitude. Remember I said, so the men, there's some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. I said they trust in chariots because they are strong, and men because they're mighty. They put their trust in these things. They trust the science. It's the same thing. Because there is no the science. It's like trust the work that the scientists did. Trust the scientists is what they're saying. Not trust the science. Because science is science. Science is a method of exploration and of recording what you do and hypothesis and and all that, and experimentation. To find out answers to questions. It's a very handy tool. It's something you do. It's not something you believe in or follow. You know what I mean? It's not like that at all. I mean, a scientist will follow the evidence if they're an honest broker. But a scientist might cover up all the evidence, lie, and call that science. The science of lies. By the multitude of my chariots I am come up. I have the power. I have the power. Yeah? He's come up to the heights of the mountains, where all the tall trees are, and says, cut them all down. And again, the analogy is of all the kingdoms of the world are portrayed as a mountain with all these tall cedars on, all these proud trees of the nations. I have a song too, I should play that one. The funny thing is I actually looked at it in my, there we go, now it's hidden. So I actually looked for Ezekiel 31, which I have a video for on my other YouTube page and stuff, and is probably most people are familiar with it, but I wanted to play that at some point because even though the translation may be dubious, it does in the King James say, against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and against his multitude, behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches and with a shadowing shroud. And I do, in my video on my other channel, the youtube.com/user Paul Strangini or something like that. Let's see if I got this ages ago. Like, you have to have 1,000 subscribers to get these now, but I have a personalized URL because I'm grandfathered in, even though I actually came late to YouTube. There we go. User Paul Strangini. That still works. And I don't think you have to put the caps in, but I do because that's my name. So, yeah, actually I did find that song, so I'll probably play it on the outro. Well, actually I didn't find it quite yet. I'm just going to play the song itself when we get there. Yeah, there it is. All right. Okay, so there it is. All ready to go. Okay, so, and I wanted to play it because it is appropriate when you think about the idea. We talk about the tall trees of being representative of the nations, or within the nation of the leaders, the princes, so to speak. I'm going to take all the princes out, and I'll be king of kings. You know what I mean? That's how you sort of look at. That's why he's a type of Antichrist. He comes to take over. to exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, as it is written. That's another one where I talk about certainty of doctrine. It's like the rapture. Boy, like you never consider the counterfactual. Like, what if I was wrong? It's just a matter of faith, something people disagree passionately about. There's no like, let me think about that more than once. Let me think about that maybe 10 or 12 times. Or maybe I'll take it up every couple of years, if nothing else. Yeah, I mean, like, I question my beliefs all the time. Not my base belief, because I used to question my basic faith until God interceded and made that a moot point for me. Because I don't question the existence of God. I believe it. But that's small potatoes. The devils also believe and tremble. Of course they know. Now you figured it out. Good for you. But the king of Assyria does not fear God. He thinks he is going to, like you said, he talks about the gods, but then he also talks about the kings. In the end of the speech, when he talks about what they did to all, have the gods of the nations deliver them. Here it is in verse 12, right? And then, where is the king of Hamath? Where is the king of Arpad? The gods of Hamath and Arpad of these nations. He uses different nations, but where are the kings? And as far as the children of Eden, I said nothing about that. I don't think it has anything to do with the Garden of Eden. I didn't even, honestly, I could have looked at it. I think I said I'm not really worried about the place names because, that's the kind of thing in the past where I would have been looking for some sort of connection. It is weird that the type of Antichrist, the Assyrian, the original, one of the original prototypes. So Pharaoh also is obviously another type, and the plagues of Egypt are obviously being referenced in Revelation also. Revelation takes in everything from the Old Testament in so many ways. Where is the king of Hamath? Do I want to even look up the children of Eden? I don't really think I do, but I'm doing it for some reason. Because maybe there's some reason I need to. What verse is that? That is verse 12. Here we go. Have the gods... let's see. These are the kind of notes I have. Hamath. Hot springs. Arpad. Spread out. Sepharvim of foreign derivation. Hena. Now probably Anna. On the Euphrates. Iva, now probably Hit on the Euphrates. Again, not much help. And as far as the children of Eden, where's children of Eden? Yeah, it is pleasure. Genesis, yeah, well, whatever. Not sure what it means. But you know what? Eden was supposed to be... we're all kind of children of Eden, so that's just weird, right? As far as like, I don't think it refers to the Garden of Eden. It's some other paradise. They were in Telesar, whatever. But the point was the way he turned on the king, because he looks more at the king than about God. Because to him, God is of no account. Gods are like, what about you, king? So he said, I'm going to go up to the mountain. I will ascend into heaven. He exalted and opposed himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped. So that he is God, stands in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. When it says, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Isaiah chapter 14, which we covered. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That phrase, sides of the north, is paralleled in the Psalms. I believe it's 48. But you can find it by using a concordance or a phrase search. In the sides of the north in the King James. Mount Zion, beautiful for situation, in the sides of the north. That's what it says in the Psalms. I think it's 48. I want to just confirm that. It's good when you remember it and then you confirm what it was. course, I don't know if that has the effect of making me not worry about it anymore, or if it makes it more solid, to tell you the truth. Yeah, it's 48 verse 2. And just beautiful for situation. The joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great king. I'm just saying this idea of going up into the mountain. That's how I'm pushing your brain in the direction of. Going up into the mountain. You who said in your hearts, I will ascend into heaven. All right, there we go. I'm just sort of cheating here by not switching it. How art thou fall from heaven, O Lucifer? I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, Mount Zion. Now here it's Mount Lebanon, but it's a similar, to him Mount Zion is nothing. He just looks to the loftiest natural area. And the Lebanon was notable for the tall trees. So they look to Lebanon and the glory there. It's a beautiful land, especially back then. Now I don't know to what degree that is true, the fir trees thereof, and all the, how well forested that land is anymore. The whole area, you understand, we think of it as desert, but it wasn't always so terrible. People have been living there a long time and kind of destroying it. So, it's one of the most environmentally devastated regions, if you think about it. I mean, consider what it used to be like 3,000 years ago. It's just, that is kind of, it can be reversed, and there are people who know how to do this with livestock and stuff and herd animals. In fact, a lot of that is what probably is still keeping the land from utterly collapsing, is the fact that there are still herdsmen. Because the eating of the keeping the grasses clipped and the dunging of the earth is a good part of the process. It encourages all kinds of activities and stuff. I don't know why I'm talking about ecology here on the study today. Well, just because we have this beautiful place described, right? I will enter into the heights of his border, to the forest of his Carmel. Mount Carmel, another mountain. Notice it's the sides of Lebanon. The sides of the north is the Mount Zion. The sides of Lebanon here. There's a parallel. He sees his own mountain, sort of. The mountain he's going to exalt himself upon, whatever. He doesn't regard Zion. He's just totally blind to God. He doesn't think like that anything. Jerusalem's just another kingdom. I've digged and drunk water. That's the power. Meaning, you know what I mean? Understand, when you're looking for water and you dig and you find, it's like, I'm lucky. That's why I look at that. Like, I'm so lucky. As far as that's how I feel like it. It's like, it just means I'm successful. When I make a hole, I find water, which is the whole point. And dig here, water. Also, it could mean that a lot of the diverting the waters. Some places have waters running into their town. And so he would block it off their water sources. Now, Hezekiah had prepared a water source for the siege. Remember, the whole time while they... and so I think they probably block off their water source. But, There's something about their sieges that I was going to... It'll come back to me. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, and of ancient times that I have formed it? Now have I brought it to pass, that thou shouldest be to lay waste to defend cities, ruinous heaps. I'm saying, ultimately, it's destiny. You're running face first into it. You were ordained. For this purpose, he said to Pharaoh, for this purpose have I raised thee up. This has always been the teaching of the Bible. Pharaoh, the Assyrian, they're all in the same category of big bad enemy. You know what I mean? And so that's why the king of Babylon, because it's chapter 14, of Isaiah, if you look at verse 4, this is the proverb taken up against the king of Babylon. Prophesied, that's long before the things transpired with him. That's the funny thing is that they talk about Isaiah talking about Cyrus, but like the things that he talked about the king of Babylon were very notably before there was much to say about the Babylonians. A second here. Where am I going? Oh yeah, not Lamentations. Why am I that? 1 second. Yep. All right. Problem is, while you're looking for one scripture and you're talking about another, you get confused about what scripture you're looking for. For this purpose have I raised thee up, Pharaoh. As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid. For he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy. I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for the same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore he hath mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will, he hardeneth. And there are many Christians who cannot read these verses without distorting them completely in their mind. It's like, they have to distort, they have to render it somehow. I don't know, because I don't know how to read it any other way. Like when I hear it, all I'm hearing it is just, it's not a particularly esoteric passage. We're not talking about the prophecies of Isaiah here, where we're talking about tall trees and mountains and all this symbolic thing. And the woman in the city is laughing at you, and the children have been, like I said, when Hezekiah first pours out his complaint. We may go back to this. Hold on. When he first pours out his complaint, not that part. And he says, where is it? The children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring forth. I mentioned in chapter 66, the Lord declares, shall I do this thing? No. The implication is no. But I know that feeling. Like you've come to the point, the critical moment, where it's time to give birth. I've been there with my wife 8 times. I've watched someone go through it. And I've gone through it myself, being a somewhat empathetic person. It always is a little stressful for me. It's stressful. It's not painful at all. It's actually quite, but emotionally and mentally, it's difficult to watch someone you love screaming in pain and maybe suggesting that they think something could be wrong and stuff. And like in the last one, I remember the heartbeat, they had the heart monitor on, and you could hear every time there's a contraction, the baby's heartbeat like slowing down. And I don't remember, I'm like, did they always have this machine on? Did this always, it's like, blah, blah. It was like oppressive in its constant reminder that things were a little iffy, or that's the way I felt, and I just couldn't wait to get it over with. And the thing is, you don't want, when it's time to give to bear the child, you need to do it. It's a critical moment because both the woman and the child can die in that moment, and historically, that's what they did. Women used to suffer awful rates of death during childbirth. It's just not Awful rates. It's not like I'm saying like 50% of women die. No, that's not how. But, today we take it for granted that we can, my wife did not have any complications in any of her births, none. And so that was fine. It all worked out fine. But sometimes women do have complications that in times past could result in bad outcomes, either the death of the child or the mother or both. And so they were familiar with the idea that it could be time to give, the child has been growing, the woman is pregnant. There's a pregnancy. There's a lot of symbolic meaning to pregnancy. It's like something that is waiting to happen, something that was conceived at some point, and that's what the Lord is sort of saying, is that I've done it. This is something I conceived of long ago, before you thought you were running up into the mountains to cut down all the trees and exalting yourself above everything else. I did it. Haven't you heard? For this purpose I have raised you up, Pharaoh. And the question of man is always, and Paul always addresses it, and people don't like the answer to that either. They don't like the answer. Many Christians don't like the answer. He very clearly says here, why does he yet find fault for who has resisted his will? Meaning, if God predetermines everything, how can he find people guilty? How can they be held responsible? And the answer is right here. But it's sort of given, it's implied. Nay, but, O man, who are you to reply against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel to honor and another to dishonor? Like Jacob and Esau, they were twins, at least fraternal twins. Because they didn't. It was obvious later on they didn't look identical, because Esau is described, and so is Jacob, as being very different types of people physically. What if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had afore prepared unto glory, even us whom he called, not only of the Jews only, not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles. And the primary subject is about Israel, but it's about the election of God. And people say, well, he's talking about Israel. He's blah, 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 blah. That's a distraction. As he's talking about Israel, he hits on a principle which is throughout the scriptures. In Isaiah, as we're studying, there's no other answer for the king of Assyria. I did it. It's not, now I'm going to stop you. You're a bad boy. No, the answer of God is, you have served your purpose. Thank you for your cooperation. Now you die. That's the answer of God to the wicked. And you say, well, wait a second. What about this whole fight? Well, how can he find them guilty? I said, shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? The Assyrian is who he is. Sennacherib was a man of a particular temperament, and he was a sinful man, like all of us. He doesn't turn us into, he hardens, which means he does not reveal the wisdom. He prevents us from changing our ways. That means he hardens us in our ways. He hardens us. Hardening is not, you know what a hardening is? It is taking what exists and just keeping it, making it stronger. You know what I mean? Like if I'm a jerk, I become a bigger, better, badder jerk. You know what I mean? I'm just using that as a very crude example. You know what I mean? God does not show me ways to become better. He does not open my eyes to the truth that I ought to be righteous. I just continue hardening and hardening and hardening in my own ways. And why did God make me that way? He made me. And I am who I am. The only thing that would change that is if he would have mercy on me and reveal himself to me and bring this hidden wisdom and the power of his Spirit to transform me into something else. Because otherwise we are all worthy to be condemned. God finds fault with us because we are faulty. We were created to be what we are. And if God created us differently, we wouldn't be us. That's one of the things I assert. That if God changed me, meaning from the beginning, like if I wasn't made myself with my wicked passions, if he made someone with other passions, well, that would be a different person. He could even, because you could take my DNA, clone me, and there'd be another individual who'd be very similar to me, but would somehow not be me. You know what I mean? It'd be my twin, born 50 years later. And that's just the fact, is that your self, your entity is so fragile. You ought to be on your face thanking God that he made you. Because just a little flicker to the left, a little flicker to the right of his finger in the making a soul, and it's a different one. You know what I mean? It's a different one. Why hast thou made me thus? I made you. You know who you are. I know who you are. I know you're going out, and I know you're coming in. That's what he says to him. I know you. I see you, Sennacherib. I see you in your secret chambers. I see you when you go out, when you think no one's looking in the dark of night. That's what he's saying. I know your place. I know where you live. God knows where you live. As far as you think you had something to do with this, I prepared the way for you. They were dismayed and confounded. They were as the grass of the field, as the green herb, as grass on the housetops. Grass on the housetops, it's doesn't it can kind of spring up, but it's very precarious. Like grass growing in certain location, anything that manages to grow on the housetop, when it dries out, man, as corn, that's grain that is blasted before it's grown up. There's a critical stage in development of a lot of plants where if they don't get water, they die. Because they need water to grow. I mean, there's a certain stage where they have like sufficient root and growth that they can sustain themselves on the water they have within themselves. And they're sufficiently adult that they hold their water. And it doesn't just get blasted out by the sun. Because the sun can just dry tender leaves out. Like the tender leaves of a plant that's just emerging. If it gets too much sun, it can be completely dried out and blasted. Even the first true leaf. I mean, they need to reach a certain stage. And if it gets too hot and dry, it's like, I've had years when too wet a spring is a challenge to growing plants, and too dry a spring also, of course, can be very challenging. Especially if it's dry and hot. You don't want a dry, hot spring. We almost had that this year, but not quite. At least where I'm at. But I know thy abode, thy going out, thy coming in, and thy rage against me. Yeah, I know all about you and your little secret chambers there when you think no one's looking. So, basically, God sees. I know you. The wicked men, the princes of this world think, nobody sees me, man. I can just go and, they do all their wicked works. I feel like, as I'm saying this, I'm like, I feel like everything's so out in the open right now in the world that it's like, nobody's even trying to hide their wickedness anymore. That's a bad sign. Because thy rage against me and thy turmoil has come up into my ears, therefore I put my hook in thy nose, my bridle in thy lips. So I'm saying, because he hardens them, it only proves what they are, what they always have been. God did not have to intercede in my life and send the Holy Spirit or send the gospel. He could have made me averse to it. There are a multitude of ways that things coulda, woulda, change things. But that's not. This is what is what is. Because the Lord has done it. The Lord made the earth and all that dwell therein. And by his particular knowledge and his particular decision of how he did things, he already knows exactly how everything's going to turn out. And for those he has chosen, everything is working together for their good. Because he has chosen them. And is it unrighteous of God to choose some and have mercy on them and not choose others? Well, there's a parable that I think demonstrates what he thinks about that, which is the parable of the workers' wages. Matthew chapter 20. I have a special on that you can find on, my oraclesofgod.org. I mean, I can even point it out. I will point it out because I'm not going to talk about it. We're short on time, and I'd like to just keep moving a little bit with, because I don't think there's a lot more to add to what we've talked about here. Oh boy. Did I skip it already? No. Of course, there's a video of it. It's number 27 here. Video study 27. Parable of the workers' wages. It's an hour long, but a very detailed study on that parable. Oops. All right. So, and what it says is God's opinion of himself is that he's generous. Is that we all deserve death, and because he gives some mercy, basically that makes others think, hey, wait a second. Hey, we deserve mercy too. No, none deserve mercy. What he does with what belongs to him is his business. And it's a stark reality. But you know what? I got nothing. Other than the promise of God, I expect nothing from this life except death. Every atheist believes that there's nothing but death waiting for them. And so if you found out afterwards that oh no, actually the God thing was real and blah, 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 and you'd be all angry and stuff, but you know what? You were content. Or not, or whatever. But it's like you took your penny and now you can go. You know what I mean? I don't know what to say. I can't grant the mercy that only God gives, which is to have eyes to see and ears to hear the truth, to be able to put your faith in Christ. It's not something I can just hand off to someone. Like, I'll give you the power to impart the Holy Spirit to people, like Simon the Sorcerer wanted to buy. The wicked rage against God. Why don't you choose us? You know what I mean? Or I don't need God. I, by the strength of my hand, by the power of my chariots, by the might of my science, by my financial wherewithal, by my money, by my, by all the things that men bring to bear to use to make themselves powerful in the world and to use that power to whatever it is they want to do with it. I don't know. Manipulate people to extract even further power. It's just, there's no, at some point you get caught up in that money thing, and there's no amount of money, if you want money, that is going to be enough for you. You know what I mean? Because the belly is never full. It's got to eat again. But what is this life for? You know what I mean? I do think that a lot of people who get money, though, they do suffer from megalomania. There sometimes seems to be a certain, like you think about like Carnegie, the steel guy. And he also built libraries all over the place because he realized he just become super rich and he didn't know, had more money than he knew what to do with. So, he wanted to do good things and build up his name. It's kind of like the parable of the unjust steward, the corrupt steward, who basically wasted his master's good. This is from Luke chapter 16, I believe, or 17. I think it's 16 or 17, whatever. It's right in there. And he wasted his master's goods, so he went around and he wrote down the debts of his friends. But basically, he did favors for people so that when he was out of work, that they would sort of carry him along. All right? But the reason I think that parable, it reminds me of guys like Andrew Carnegie, or as they say, Carnegie. It was always Carnegie. But when the reason that reminds me of that in that parable, because in that parable, the steward who had wasted his master's goods, the master is supposed to represent God kind of, but he's not God in the parable. He's a corrupt man. And so he praises, that's what throws people, because the corrupt master praises the corrupt servant. And for being shrewd. And what his shrewdness is, he realizes he's going to lose everything. That's like life. I'm going to lose it all. And so what he does is he's got charge over his master's stuff. Like, let's say in life you've been blessed with all this money, right? And he doesn't know what to do. So what he does is he does favors for all these people so that they will receive him into their houses. And in a spiritual sense, I see that as like, they build libraries and put their names on them to try to create a new house with his name on it. So he could go on, so that they may receive you into everlasting habitations, is what it says. Meaning, Jesus says, Jesus' conclusion is, make yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that they may receive you into everlasting habitations. He says, see how that serves you. And that's what it is. I look at it like they carry your name on like forever, but it's a poor imitation of everlasting life. You know what I mean? It's kind of a shrewd thing to do, but it's also like a futile thing to do. In this world, it makes sense. Well, I'll just use all my money to win friends, and then I'll be famous forever, and my name won't die out. My name will be plastered on libraries, and it'll be plastered on, I'll make a foundation so my money keeps bringing my name up. So people keep saying my name, Carnegie, he's still doing things. His money is still active. I live, but you died, you're dead. You're dead and buried, and none of that availed anything. Because all the works of men eventually crumble into dust, and their names shall be forgotten. Except God. That's why we don't waste God's goods. We've got to exercise our talents. This shall be a sign unto thee. Ye shall eat this year such as grow. So this is what he says, the sign to Hezekiah. That this is going to come to pass. The king of Assyria will not come into the city. So 30, there's only 8 more. That's 8 verses. That's all right. So we will start at verse 30. We've definitely got this is good verses worth spending a lot of time on. These are good verses. This is good verses. And this is good Englishes. All right. So we'll begin at verse 30 on Monday. Thanks for joining me, and we'll look forward to being back again on Monday in the book of Isaiah, chapter 37.
And under his glory he shall kindle a burning like the burning of a fire,
And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the 3rd month, in the 1st day of the month, that the word of the Lord came unto me, saying,
Son of man, speak unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his multitude, whom art thou like in thy greatness? Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon, with a branches, and with a shadowing shroud, and of an stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters made him great, the deep set him up on high, with the rivers running round about his plants, and sent out her little rivers to all the trees of the field. Therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the because the multitude